It is a pretty drastic move for the bondholders to basically say we're not going to allow you to do this restructuring. But they clearly don't expect a state bailout of Vanke, nor do they expect, I think at this point, for the property market to improve in the future. So their attitude probably is we might as well take the hit now and see if we can get a restructuring done of some kind rather than letting them extend and pretend.
Do you think that this could lead to a default and then the restructuring?
Well, it would be quite significant if it were to be a default, but it looks like we're leaning in that direction. I mean, Vanke was bailed out by a state proxy, Shenzhen Metro, which is not a central government company. It's actually a local government company. And from my sources, because of the money that they had to pay, they had to repay Shenzhen Metro. They cut salaries for workers in Shenzhen, according to a friend of mine who actually works for the government. And as a result of that, people are getting hurt by these collapses of the property market, and the central government is not stepping in because their attitude is this is dead money, and they're going to put their bets on the future of technology. So I expect it is quite possible that we will see a default of some kind because there's no indication that either Shenzhen or the central government is going to bail them out.
We're looking at 364 billion yuan in liabilities for Vanke, and potentially this could dwarf the defaults at Evergrande and Country Garden. There really isn't any company that is too big to fail in China, right? Because they haven't bailed out any company.
Well, the government in Beijing is worried about a systemic crisis, mainly in the banking system. They don't really care so much if the property market crashes. What they don't want is a bank run. Most of the assets of these property companies are not going to destroy the banking system. It's just not large enough. So from their attitude is, okay, look, Shenzhen, you got yourself in this trap. Let's see if you can handle this. Now, if we started seeing massive protests in the streets, then there would be some sort of quiet merger or acquisition or something to try to at least reduce the pain. But so far, we're not seeing that. So I'm beginning to think a default is likely.
A little bit more about what you were talking about with Shenzhen Metro. This is a state investment firm. They bailed out the company with $383 million back in February. How is it positioned now? Do you think that they could do another injection? What are the outs for Vanke here?
Well, there's not that much. I mean, obviously, if Shenzhen Metro was ailing so much that the government of Shenzhen had to cut salaries, if my information is correct, then clearly the resources at Shenzhen Metro is down. And I'm doing larger projects for the book on property that I'm writing at Harvard. And basically, the local governments are now starved of revenue. I mean, their land sales are down like 40, 50% since the peak. And that was a big chunk of their revenue. So they're not in a position to be bailing out these property companies. And clearly, the central government has no interest in doing this because Xi Jinping believes that investing money in property is not as valuable as investing in AI and EVs and technology. So I think what I think is being overlooked, both by Western observers and by the people inside China, is that if property was 31% of GDP at its peak, if you lose a big chunk of that, you're losing a hole that's very hard to fill with AI and new tech because you just don't have the demand that's going to come up with it. So you're talking about a long-term secular stagnation for the economy.
So we got a whole slug of data at the top of the hour. All China new home prices included, down 2.1%, but we're seeing significant drops in prices except Shanghai, which continuously and consistently we're seeing increases. November was up 5.1%. In terms of home prices, what they indicate, when do you expect a recovery in the sector? It's not going to be in 2026.
Well, first of all, those prices are completely made up and they're completely wrong. I mean, the actual pricing is down 40 to 80% depending on where you are. So nobody who analyzes this believes any of that. Second of all, 60% of property is actually in tier 3 and below cities. So their prices are doing really badly. So you may have some isolated areas where Shanghai and Beijing are actually holding up okay. Not great, but okay. But for a big chunk of the country, which includes a lot of the engine of growth for China, you're talking about a 50 or 60% decline in activity. Plus overall fixed asset investment, which is somewhat more trustworthy, is down in property, I think down 14%. So we're continuing to see downturns. Okay, we went from 1.67 billion square meters of production in 2019, I think it was, to about 780 last year, 80 million. We're probably going to be down, you've got to hit a bottom of 500 to 600 million, maybe in 2026. So we probably have another year before it plateaus, and at that point, it may just sort of just be like an L-shaped recovery. There won't be any upside.